okay with going beyond private and sending it out to more realtors, we can probably always have that donation link in there and push that out to everybody if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
All right. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and put the spotlight on Carl and let's jump in.
Okay, and if I may share my screen, and I do have that capability.
Yep.
Well, good morning, everyone. Always, always great to talk to our Remax family. So I live in Little Rock, Arkansas, and it's also where my mom lived. And I hang my license with Remax Elite here, and fingers crossed that this pandemic will have settled so that we can get to our Remax R4 conference early next year. But it is my honor to share my mom with you over the next little bit. This can be very informal, so if you have any questions or any feedback, I invite you to put that into the chat, and we can make this more of a dialogue. Really, to Nate's point, it's really hard to navigate life without my mom, and it's very hard to relive this story and tell it. But I do so because I think that it's a very teachable story. I think there's a lot we can learn from my mom's story, and I do. Before I begin today, please know that it doesn't honor my mom if any of us walk away from this session with a spirit of fear or paranoia. That doesn't help anyone. But rather, I hope that you feel inspired to make positive change so that you can stay safe and feel empowered and maybe a little bit more aware of some of the challenges and risks that we face as we go about our business. As I begin today, just to tell you a little bit about my mom personally, in addition to being a realtor, she was 50 years old at the time that she was taken from us, and she had been married to my dad for almost 34 years. So if you do that math, you realize that we we're quite the Arkansas stereotype here. My parents got married at a very young age and had me at a very young age, and later had my brothers. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about my mom's favorite role. So as much as she loved being a realtor and a wife and a mom, by far her favorite role was being a grandparent. And I know all the grandparents on this Zoom today would echo that. As I begin today, want to really kind of unpack an uncomfortable truth, and that is that my mom was targeted for reasons that really apply to every one of us. And I think that is in part why my mom's story resonates with so many people, because these people that took mom from us, they were a husband and wife. They didn't know my mom, and she was targeted with the intention to hold her for ransom based on strictly on publicly available information. And so based upon that information that they saw online, they thought that my mom was so rich, and this is their words, they thought my mom was so rich that they would never have to work again. And I only tell you this not to necessarily just to divulge my parents' personal financial information, but just to make the point, my parents were not rich. My mom did at times have great success in real estate, but among friends, my mom had $167 in her checking account the day she was kidnapped. And so I want to tell you about why these people thought she was so rich. And this is kind of the eerie thing, is that when the investigators, the detectives, got a search warrant and they got into the home of these bad people and they retrieved their laptop and they started looking back through the history of this laptop, they found that this couple had done a number of internet searches. They had Googled mom, which mainly returned results related, of course, to her real estate marketing. They had gone to my mom's Facebook profile, which was 100% public. So they were able to dig through that, see vacation photos, which who knows, we can only speculate, perhaps in some way furthered their, their belief that, she's rich enough to go to the beach, rich enough to provide ransom, who knows. And then lastly, and I think perhaps most eerily, just to know they knew to do this, is that evidence was found that they went to online county property records and they did a search by my mom's name to determine where my mom lived and the property value of the home that my mom lived in. Which again, it was a nice middle class home on the lake, property value $250,000. Okay, but these people, based on this publicly available information, deemed her so rich they would never have to work again. And you all have probably at one point or another, even if it's just your friends kind of poking at you a little bit, just saying, must be nice to be a real estate agent and be raking in all that cash. And it's just something about, as laughable as that is for all of us, because Lord knows every commission we get, we earn through and through. But just because we have that R next to our name, and then of course with us being hanging our license with such a recognizable brand, it's just this perception of wealth that we have to overcome, especially when dealing with people like my sweet mom came into contact with. When asked repeatedly, why Beverly? Why did you target her? What took you to her? It always came back to 2 points, and you see those on the screen here. Because she was rich and because she worked alone. A real estate agent wasn't actually their first. These people, they planned this. This was very predatory. This took, and real estate was not their only industry that they considered. But ultimately, it came down to real estate because all real estate agents are rich and we all work alone. So, uncomfortable truth as we get started today is that these people didn't know my mom and she was targeted for reasons that unfortunately applied to all of us, regardless of how many times we found ourselves at the closing table. This slide, if we didn't know the context of this presentation today, I think that, this could just as easily slide into any real estate presentation. And you've got this nice exterior shot of this nice home. You've got a street address, a property overview, an appointment time. And I designed this slide somewhat intentionally because I wanted to try to make the point. My mom had been in the business for about a dozen years, a business that she loved. She took it as an honor and a privilege to serve her clients. And I don't just say that because she's no longer with us. Love the industry. Throughout her career, just like so many of you on this session this morning, she had been in the business so long that she had the opportunity to serve hundreds of clients. And through that process of all these years, she had shown thousands of properties. But all it took was one. All it took was one couple and one showing. And I lost my precious mom. So often at the end of interviews or different podcasts or whatever, people ask me, is there anything else? Is there anything that you would want to add? If you could only make one point, what would it be? And I always come back to how unremarkable this particular showing was. It was just one showing out of years and years of safe transactions in her successful career. And so it makes the point, I believe, that we have to remain diligent. And if I may, I want to back up and tell you about the events that led to this showing, that led to my sweet mom finding herself in this home with a taser in her side. So if you would imagine with me that today you begin getting phone calls and texts and emails. So all three: phone, text, email, from a husband and wife, and their story is that they are relocating to your area due to work. They're already in your area. They're currently renting. They want to get into their permanent residence as soon as possible. Luckily, to aid in that urgency of getting in a property, they are cash buyers. You're talking to both husband and wife. As you interact both phone calls and text with that phone number with this couple, the area code of that phone number matches that of the state that they say they're moving from. The email address that they give you to correspond with and put into the MLS to alert them of new properties that meet what they're looking for, that email address matches the names that they've given you. All of this sounds solid. It sounds good.
You went in?
And so in response to, trying to, or in effort, I should say, to try to serve these clients, my mom began, of course, the hunt to try to find them properties that they would be interested in seeing. And due to low inventory, not as low as what we're seeing across the country right now, but due to low inventory and them being somewhat picky, mom was having trouble finding properties that they wanted to view. And so she began doing like we all do. She began talking about this couple and their needs to other agents within her office. I always kind of joke that God loved the people that marry a real estate agent, because whether they want to or not, they are going to hear the ups and downs and ins and outs of every transaction that we work on. And my dad was no exception. My dad knew everything that my mom was working on. He knew everything that I've just told you about this couple. And so, that be what it may, if we can just pause that and peel this back, the only thing that I've just told you that was actually based in truth was the fact that this husband and wife that mom was talking to, they were male and female and they were married. That's it. That's the only thing that's true. My mom had no idea the names were fictitious, that the phone number that she interacted with was made possible because of an app that they had downloaded on their phone, which gave them a spoof number. And in the fall, so this happened in September of 2014. And so you can think back to that being a happier time, because one of the good things about back then was that we weren't as plagued with these spoof number calls like we get now. I think now we're all on guard about when we see phone numbers come across our phones, because we're like, it looks local, but it's probably a telemarketer. And so who knows if that out-of-state number aided, at least in their story, that they had moved in from out of state. But the truth is that was a fake spoof number. These people were never from out of state. They were always from right across town. And, of course, cash buyers, there had never been an exchange or proof of funds. These people didn't have, of course, the money. Of course, they didn't even have the interest in purchasing a home. And be reminded that, because we don't do it all the time, it's not very often that we're creating email accounts, right? Luckily, we just don't have to do it that often. You get one, you keep it. But any one of us could go and just in a matter of seconds to a free email service such as Yahoo or Gmail, and in just a few seconds time, we could have an email account with any name that we want. And so that in the email address that she interacted with and that she had put into the MLS, the names associated with that matched these fictitious names that had been provided. My mom had no idea that the husband of this couple was a 7-time felon. And of most of his felonies, it was, like so often these bad guys are trying to show our system that they are bad people. And so many of these felonies were revolved around theft and theft of property and identity theft. And it was all about taking from other people for personal gain. That be what it may, I want to tell you a little bit about this particular property. Because if you just knowing what you see on this screen here, this actually looks like a pretty nice house. However, This home, even before what happened to my mom happened, happening, this home really had a tragic past. It had been foreclosed upon years ago. It had sat vacant for so many years. Throughout the years, there had been issues of squatters that had gotten in there. There had been issues of vandalism. There had been, people have gotten in there and ripped out anything and everything of value from light fixtures to faucets to even down to the copper wiring. I mean, this house on the inside was a real mess. To add to the confusion and kind of surrounding this home is it was very poorly represented online. And I don't know, we don't talk about the importance of real estate photography so often and its role in safety. But an accurate portrayal of a home online actually would have helped my mom. This house online at the time one was taken had this as the leading photo on Zillow. And then it was followed by just a couple of very dimly lit photos that were probably taken by a very outdated camera phone. And so with knowing that this house was in this state of a really disrepair, the yard hadn't been cared for in a very long time, that the grass was above the knee. But alternatively, and who knows if this in some way plays into our situational awareness, but this particular property was actually located in the community that my parents lived in. It's a little hard to tell, but if you look to the left of this home, you can see that it's lakefront property. And my parents lived on that same lake. Any given weekend, I would be out with my parents on their boat, and we would see this home from the vantage point of the lake. So my mom had to drive past the road that this house sits on every single day to get home. The familiarity of this community, of course, was high for my mom. And then when you get to thinking about areas that are safe, this is certainly one of those. Just a couple doors down from this particular home is where the pastor of my mom's church lived. And so knowing all those things, knowing it's my mom's community, but also knowing that this home is in a state of disrepair. Imagine then when my mom got a phone call from the husband of this couple, and he expressed a desire to see this particular property. Knowing what you know about this buyer profile and the urgency of wanting to get into a home, I can only, we can speculate that this would have never been on the list that my mom would have recommended, right? So we know about how this conversation went from the vantage point of the husband. And so the husband during the interrogation said that when he called my mom about seeing this property, that my mom told him that she would not be able to show this property to him because she was bound by a company policy that prohibited her from showing property in a rural area alone. Well, no such policy existed. And so we know something was at play there. Maybe my mom knew that maybe she got a weird vibe from that guy that day. And so her instinct was kicking in. And that was her thought of a way to combat that, which I think is a really smart strategy. Maybe also she knew that showing this property would be a waste of time. I mean, we can only speculate, right? But we can learn from mom, and we know that that's a good strategy she had. But what we can learn even more from is then what do you do then when the husband hands his phone immediately to the wife, and the wife says, hey, I'm going to be coming from work and I'll meet you guys there. Would your company be okay with that? And, I wish so badly we were all together this morning, because quite frankly, this is where we kind of pause the story, and you see kind of so many agents get kind of wide-eyed because, and I'll tell on myself here, before this happened to my mom, I would not have ever thought that a situation, working with buyers and there being a risk of victimization or a risk of any type of risk, I would have thought that to be so low that it wouldn't have even been on my radar because there was a female involved. And right, wrong, whatever, that's just the bias that in my personal experience that I bring to the table. And I find that that is true with a lot of people. So in this lesson from my sweet mom is that, bad guys can take any shape, size, gender, and we must, remain diligent in our screening of new clients. I don't, just for the sake of time and not reliving some of the awful, awful details, but I know you will all believe me when I say that the wife was just as disgusting and vile and evil as the husband in this. She wasn't just some damsel that was along for, that got caught up in something. She had played a very active role in the deception of my mom. And so, like so many of us, my mom decided to go forward, and she said, "Absolutely, let's just make sure that we not set the appointment any later than 6 o'clock, because there are no utilities at this property. Good safety there, and we want to make sure that you can view the house in the daylight." And so the day comes. It's Thursday, September 25th. And my mom has, what I kind of say is a regular day in real estate pre-COVID, where she was able to work in her office most of the morning. She had an affiliate luncheon. She won $50 in a raffle at that affiliate luncheon. And so then that afternoon, she calls my dad, which here's such good safety from mom too. She called my dad to let him know what the rest of her daily itinerary looked like. She told him that she would be showing this property. And my dad was familiar with exactly where this property was because, again, it was in their community. So she said she'd be showing this property at 6 p.m. to that couple from out of state. And that when the showing was done, she would take that $50 that she won in that raffle and she would pick up dinner to go and she would see him at home. And if I may just quickly point out, while there are so many things we can learn from mom, and she was so great and in so many ways so safe, but it goes to show how we really have to have a toolbox or a full strategy, layers of safety, because in my mom's case, all of the safety that she did, the decisions that she made, they certainly helped us find her and they helped us get justice for her, but it wasn't enough to save her. And so that's why we talk about this, that's why we do this. My precious mom got to this property early that day, took a number of calls prior to the client getting there. And I use the word client loosely. It's not fair to our actual clients to even call them that. I'll call them bad guys from here on. But my mom actually opened the house prior to the bad guy arriving. And it's 6 o'clock. A black car pulls in next to my mom. A young Caucasian male with short, dark hair got out of the vehicle. And it was around this time that my mom also began getting text messages from the wife. And the wife's story was that she was so sorry, but she had gotten caught up at work. And she had a request that would my mom be so kind to please go ahead and show the husband the home that day. And because it was so poorly represented online, would she be so kind as to take her cell phone and to text pictures to the wife and be available throughout the showing to answer any questions she had. And that would make it as though the wife was there on the showing, at least digitally. And every time I tell this story, my heart hurts, my stomach burns at this point in the story, because my mom is being faced with a plan that is different than what she had agreed to. This plan that these bad guys had was probably this particular piece was probably the only thing that was smart, because it was a way to almost kind of guilt the agent and to keep going ahead with the showing. And of course, it was somewhat smart, because as my mom would be taking photos and answering questions from the wife with her cell phone, it would also keep her somewhat distracted. And who knows, we can only speculate. I know I feel it on behalf of my mom every time I tell this story. But I imagine that her instincts were going off. And while I can only speculate for what she was going through, I think we can all identify with what it's like to be put in a situation where we're uncomfortable, but we press forward so that we don't look weak or unprofessional or rude. And so my precious mom proceeded with showing this property to the husband. At the conclusion of the trial, we got back my mom's cell phone, and the last 10 photos on my mom's camera roll were of the interior of this house. My mom had no idea she was taking those photos and sending them to the wife, that she was, in essence, kind of documenting her last few moments of freedom. It was when my mom was in an upstairs bedroom in this home. As she turned from taking the photo that you see on the screen on the bottom right, from behind, my mom found a taser in her side. And this man that had been posing as a client suddenly became her kidnapper. And he's been very, very proud to admit that the last words that my mom heard in her freedom was that she was about to have a very bad day. He tased my sweet mom, and he bound her in the most ridiculous lime green duct tape. He then came outside this house and got in his car, and he turned it around and he backed it up to this house and he opened the trunk. And I tell you these things because, that for a reason. And what I told you about at 6:00, a black car pulls in next to mom, young Caucasian male, short dark hair, approaches mom. They go into the home. Moments later, he comes out, gets in his car, turns it around, opens the trunk. I tell you those things not because I speculate that they happened or that investigators pieced that together. I tell you those things because we know without a doubt that that's what happened, because it was witnessed firsthand by the next door neighbor. But the point in me telling you that is, and I hope that this is a part of the story that you can impart to your family, perhaps tonight over dinner, is that those details were not reported to the authorities until much later that night, when detectives were door knocking each of the neighbors' houses, asking them if they had seen anything or heard anything, related to the disappearance of a real estate agent. And then he was told. And this was 4 to 5 hours after my mom had already been taken. And so if there's something related to this part of the story that I can impart, it's just the importance of, if you see suspicious activity, feel empowered to report it to the authorities immediately. Of course, we're all stuck at home now, and we should have a better baseline of what safe, normal activity looks like in our neighborhoods than we ever have. So we should be able to identify these things so we can report them as we see them occur. He took my precious mom and he put her in the trunk of that car. And as if it wasn't bad enough that he was doing that, he pulled out his cell phone and he took a picture of my mom in the trunk of that car. And texted to his wife. And we can only assume that he did that because just to show his wife that their master plan of kidnapping this rich realtor to hold her for ransom was in play. There's an important part of this plan that I need to tell you, because not only does it expose like something else that my mom did that was safe, but it exposes how from the moment of kidnapping, the plan was already ruined. And it all surrounds my mom's purse. You see, their plan was that they would have my mom do a series of videos that would be text to my dad through that spoof phone number. And my mom, in her own words, would tell my dad to move all of this wealth to accounts that were accessible via the cards in my mom's purse. So that was how they're going to get the money. But the problem here is that my mom had like so many of you ladies probably do this, and you may not even think about it. You just do it because it's basic safety and security, or just practicality. But my mom had a personal strategy to always leave her purse locked in her car while she was showing property. My mom didn't carry a personal protection device of any kind, so it just made sense for her to keep it locked in her car every time. And so this bad guy, in his haste to tase and to bind in this tape, put her in the trunk of the car and drive away. In his haste to do these things, he didn't even realize that he was leaving behind, locked in my mom's car, the purse. So from the second he drove off, the plan was really already ruined. He took my mom to another spot and made her do a recording. And it would be the first of this series of recordings telling my dad what to do with the money, still not even realizing that he didn't have the purse. He then took my mom and they locked her up in the master bathroom of the bad guy's home. And then later, it was that freak out, that realization that they didn't have my mom's purse and therefore they couldn't access her money, or her perceived money, I should say. And of course, in parallel, at about 8:30 that night, I began to hear from my dad because he was concerned that my mom wasn't returning his phone calls or his text. And after he told me that mom had told him that she would be showing that property, I encouraged him to go over there. And of course, he arrived on the scene that night to find my mom's car. And this home, of course, with no utilities, it's just pitch black. There's my mom's car with her purse, her clients, the folder that she had made for these clients that documented every lie that they had told her. It was just as though my mom just disappeared, just vanished. Of course, authorities were called. And as we all, were out there on the scene that night, and we're all just, putting our heads together and trying to think of real estate scenarios that made mom okay, that explained her disappearance, that explained why we weren't hearing from her. Perhaps her phone died, or perhaps she was in the middle of writing an offer. We were so optimistic. And the later it got, of course, the fewer excuses actually made sense. And suddenly, after midnight that night, my dad's phone began to receive text from my mom. And this is a screenshot of my dad's phone. And you can see this is 6 hours and 21 minutes after that appointment. And if you can imagine how excited and relieved we were when we received those first two texts. I was not only relieved, but I'll admit that I was a little embarrassed because I was like, oh gosh, Mom, there's so many detectives that are out here away from their families. And this is all just a misunderstanding. And then that last text came through. And I know none of you knew my mom, but my mom was not one to stay out late. My mom was certainly not one to be out without my dad. And my mom wasn't much of a drinker. Every single thing about that third text, it confirmed that not only had my mom been taken, but whoever took her was bold enough to use her phone to pretend to be her. And so we knew in that moment that my mom was in a lot of trouble. What we didn't know was that just moments before this text was sent, that the bad guy had left my mom in his home, locked in that bathroom with the bad guy wife, guarding the door with a firearm while he came back out to the scene of the crime to retrieve my mom's purse so that they could carry forward with their plan. And much to his surprise, because my mom had shared her itinerary, my dad, and therefore us, and then of course law enforcement, we all knew where to go, where to start. And after he was actually stopped at a roadblock and he was questioned about his knowledge of the disappearance of a local real estate agent, and after denying knowing anything, he fled the scene. He turned on my mom's cell phone and pretended to be her in an effort to throw everything off. But in doing so, he actually confirmed the worst. We knew in that moment that my mom had been taken. This is the timeline that my mom was missing. My mom showed that property on Thursday, September 25th at 6 o'clock. My mom's body was found in the early morning hours of Tuesday, September 30th. I'll spare you me going through how horrible these days were. I think you could imagine how big the world felt. Guilt associated every time I took a drink of water because I didn't know if my mom was able to drink water. The guilt associated with eating or sleeping because I didn't know if she was afforded those luxuries. But I tell you, the thing that I cling to, the thing that I remember about these days, is the outpouring of love and support from our realtor family. And I don't just mean that of the realtors here locally. I mean everywhere. I will always, always believe that it was the love, the support, the insistence from realtors that she be found. It was these are soybean fields out by where my mom went missing, and it was by and large 80 to 90% realtors that filled these fields searching for my mom. It was realtors that kept the the laser focus, the heat on law enforcement, and then later on the judicial process to make sure that mom was not only found, that her captors were brought to justice, and and now even recently, with these bad guys appealing to get out or filing for clemency, it's the realtors that speak up and say, no, you took one of our own and we will not have it, will not stand for it. And so just know that as awful and as dark as this time was and navigating life since then, I will always be grateful. And it's the gratitude that I have and my family has that fuels what we do with the nonprofit now. It will probably come as no surprise to you that it was real estate agents that showed up at my house at 4 a.m. on Tuesday, September 30th. At around 3 a.m. that morning, news broke on Facebook, of all places, that mom's body had been found. And they didn't want me to await to find out on Facebook that mom had been found. So realtors showed up at my door to deliver that news. Pictures from mom's 50th birthday party, which was just a few months before she was taken from us. dad on the left and my brother on the right. And if I may just quickly tell you, we can only imagine what this horrible circumstance was like for my mom. But we do know 3 ways, without a doubt, that she responded to this circumstance that she found herself in. And first is that in that video, that ransom video that was taken right after she was kidnapped, it was never actually delivered to my dad, but it was rather the bad guy played it during the interrogation as a bargaining tool. And so during this video, she is essentially telling my dad not to call the cops and that she was fine. But she closed that video by saying, "I just want you to know I love you very much." And that resounds, it just so deeply within me, because moments after being hurt and put in the trunk of a car and pulled out and made to do a ransom video, she was still so concerned with my dad knowing how loved he was. Detectives obtained a search warrant and searched that bad guy's the trunk of his car, and they found evidence that my mom had gotten her hands free, and my mom was fighting for her freedom. And lastly, the wife of this evil couple testified in the trial that although she never interacted with my mom, that she had to sit there with that firearm while her husband went out to get the purse, and she had to sit there that entire time and listen to the sounds of my sweet mama praying. And just those 3 things, we know without a doubt that my mom did. That was her response to this awful circumstance, that she was full of love, she was full of fight, and maybe most importantly, my sweet mom was kept her faith right until the very end. And I know that's not really a safety message in that, but it's personally for me very inspiring. This is the spot where my mom was found. This is the spot where my mom took her last breath, and where these bad people buried her in a shallow grave. You see, that night after that bad guy fled the scene, it was like the blue lights and being questioned by that detective that night gave him suddenly this moment of clarity that this plan is awful. It will not work. You will get caught. You will go back to prison. And so in a panic, he and his wife made the decision to jump from kidnapping and ransom to kidnapping and murder. And so they took everything that they could take that my mom had on her of value, from her jewelry even to the shirt that she was wearing. The wife liked my mom's shirt, and it was found hanging in the wife's closet. After bringing my mom here and ending her life, surveillance footage was found at a local retail store of them buying a shovel, and they came back to bury my mom. Through incredible, I mean, truly, if I had more time, I would walk you through the investigative process. There were 26 investigators that didn't sleep. For all those days, they sacrificed their time away from their families and trying to find my mom. They found my mom. They found the people that did this to her. And ultimately, we went to trial. The wife took a plea deal, so in exchange for her truthful testimony against her husband, she received a 30-year sentence. She will be eligible for parole, unfortunately, when she has served 21 years. And the husband, thankfully, is at least in prison forever for capital murder and for kidnapping. I know my mom's story is very involved and very hard to hear, but if I can just quickly recap things that I hope that you will walk away from this presentation with, is that bad guys fit no definable profile. I know it's tough during COVID. If nothing else, prior to showing property to new buyers, I hope that you will at least try to schedule a Zoom session. Just add a little bit more accountability, strip away the anonymity. I hope that you obtain ID, that you share it with colleagues. I don't know which CRM you use, but a lot of CRMs have the ability for you and your contacts to go and upload ID there. Um, use your, internet to research new clients, just like they did my mom. I hope that you have trusted colleagues or your spouse that you can share your itinerary, your location. Um, go in your phone and turn on GPS sharing with your spouse, so that it's always on and you don't have to think about it. That way, if they're ever curious where you are and they can't get in touch with you, they can at least quickly find out. I hope that you'll think of my mom and trust that God-given instinct that we all have. We're all pretty bad about overriding from time to time. I hope you'll keep your back to the door and keep your clients in front of you as best you can. I know this can be tough for, female agents and men that are insistent upon being a gentleman. And it's a tough thing to navigate from time to time. But I hope that you'll practice your scripting and be insistent upon keeping your back to the door. And then lastly, as we learned with the neighbor in my mom's situation, I hope that you will feel comfortable to just report the activity that looks suspicious and let law enforcement investigate. Of course, I also hope that you'll help us keep the conversation going. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here with you today. I think that this is a big step in the right direction, as tough as it is to hear. And even just telling your colleagues that you care about them and you hope that they stay safe can make all the difference in the world. We have this safety pledge and many other things available out on our website. The Beverly Carter Foundation was formed really for the benefit of lone workers, with our primary audience being real estate agents, of course. Since forming this nonprofit, I've met many agents that have been victimized. Even just this week, I gave a presentation on Monday with an agent that many years ago was raped while showing property. And this is truly a labor of love. We have about 30 consistent volunteers all across the nation that help us get the word out. I hope that you'll interact with us on social media. I hope you'll consider us for your charitable giving. And REMAX has been a great supporter of ours too. So we're typically at R4. So if you're able to make it to R4 next year, I hope that you'll come see us on the expo floor. Additional resources. In addition to the Beverly Carter Foundation, the CE Shop has a safety section. Of course, NAR is getting better all the time. They're about to launch a complete revamp of their safety site, which is really exciting. The resources that we have available to us it's a good time for agent safety because it's being taken more seriously now than I think it ever has. Last slide I will leave you with is this picture of my kids. This photo was taken 1 week to the day prior to mom being taken from us. And we were out running the neighborhood and came across one of my mom's listings. And we stopped and kids posed for this photo and we put it on our Facebook wall. And if you'll just allow me, maybe it's a little cheesy, but if we can make this photo of my kiddos symbolic, and that is that, if this for sale sign can be representative of you, your career in real estate, your commitment to excellence in this industry, I just hope in some small way, my words and my sweet mom's story has helped heighten your awareness of the people that are on the periphery of your career. Like you see my kiddos here, your loved ones, your family, your friends that so desperately need you to come home safely every day. You got my email address listed there. I hope that if you ever need anything that you feel comfortable to reach out to me, I am happy to be a resource. I cannot thank you enough for this tremendous opportunity. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Carl. That was fantastic. Thank you. I found myself getting a little choked up a few times. I'm sure the rest of you felt that as well. But wow, what a story. And as you were telling it, I'm thinking about all the things that I've done, like your mom did, and put myself in those situations. And really gives you pause to think about doing things differently. So thank you again. Anybody have any questions? I would encourage you to go on to the Beverly Carter Foundation.org website. There's a ton of great stuff on there, really good information about the mission, and hopefully, I appreciate you spearheading the changes in our industry. I know it's not easy to tell the story and to live that. So, and again, please, I put the link in there for donations. Let's definitely show our appreciation to Carl today and support the foundation. And one of the parts I got choked up is when you told us that the people looking for your mom were realtors. And I think about the group that I work with, and we all would have been in that field looking if it was one of us. And so that's one of the things that makes this industry just amazing, and the people in it. So any other thoughts or comments, questions, you guys, before we wrap up?
Hey, Carl, thank you so much again for sharing with us this morning. I've been talking to a few people about this recently, and one thing that has come up actually more than once that you may have some insight in talking to other people and folks have been in different situations. In your case, obviously with your mom, it was pretty clear pretty quickly that there was something serious going on, and a lot of good people got involved. Do you have any advice for some of our agents out there that have had threats that are credible at varying levels, but that they're just not getting support from law enforcement on that? When they go out to say, hey, what can I do? This person is has said this. This person is posting these things. Those kind of things. But they're saying, well, that's par for the course. That happens. You're out there in the public. You're a realtor. You're going to just have to deal with that kind of stuff. Any words of wisdom on there about what they can do to really, get more support that they need?
Yeah, so, I think that is an unfortunate reality. And quite frankly, it's probably the number one thing that I see as in talking to people that have been victimized in the industry. And so what we've done, and through, it's actually, there's a link to it on our website under victim resources, is we really follow a lot of the National Stalking Hotline. We've learned a lot through them, and we have a couple of our couple of our directors that have actually gone through their training to be able to help agents navigate when we're receiving online stalking, harassment, well, and even in person. So I think that's probably a great place to start, because what they do is that they give best practices for not only identifying the behavior but documenting the behavior and letting that be known. I will give just for everyone here, it's a really tough spot for a brokerage to be in, because say someone sends something to me, and like I last year I had someone that told me, well, it was a threat on my life, and as much as I wanted to get my brokerage involved to take action against this, it really at the end of the day kind of came down on me. And so I and my brokerage had there was a really fine line, because they wanted to be able to educate other realtors in case that were to they were to experience that same behavior, but without the potential of slandering someone. We really kind of run into litigation issues there. So long answer to say, I think that the National Stalking Hotline is going to be the best resource just to go out there, and they actually have templates to help you kind of think through the things that you need to be documenting, because you will find that unfortunately the responsibility does come down to us to document this egregious behavior from these sickos, and it is disgusting behavior. So thanks for raising that, Michael.
Any other questions, you guys? Nate, you got anything you want to say to wrap us up?
Yeah, thank you, Carl. Even though I've heard you twice before, for some reason, this talk with all of us today really struck home with me, and very emotional. So,
all right. Well,
but anyway, I want to thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm going to do whatever I can to push this message far and wide, and all the Remax brokers out there. I'm going to make sure that they have an opportunity to see this, and I mean, just amazing. And thank you for what you're doing. Your storytelling about your sweet mother, just that's amazing. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. On that note, we're going to wrap up again. Carl, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for sharing. And I hope all of us got something out of this today, and be safe out there. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you, Carl.
All right.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.